And welcome to Set Ready for Placemaking Earth. This is a webinar in a series of webinars around our Placemake Earth challenge, which has placemakers all over the world co-designing with nature to help make a more resilient place wherever they may be. Today, we're going to be hearing from some inspiring multidisciplinary practitioners from the US and Europe and Mexico, and learn a little bit about their projects as we continue to enter this creative space together and experiment more with our work based in the nature and context that we're working in. So without further ado, I think I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Marco Casagrande, who has a lot of interesting stories to tell you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Hello, greetings from Finland. Right. You see me good?
Yes. Excellent.
Okay. All right. So I will talk a little bit about urban acupuncture. I have some case studies, Taiwan and China, but very related to placemaking. So I'm an architect from background. I'm professor at the Bergen School of Architecture in Norway, based in Finland. Also belong to something interesting, which is called International Society of Biourbanism. This is kind of like our office. We're like an architectural circus in a way. And so far, we've been working in 15, 16 different countries, realizing 87 different works. Same time, we all the time teach in different universities. I'm in Bergen at the moment, but 67 academic interactions so far in 26 countries. We have received the UNESCO Global Award for Sustainable Architecture and the European Prize for Architecture, and participated 5 times to Venice Biennale, and little bit of this and that. The first case what I'm showing here is called Treasure Hill. This is an, so to say, unofficial settlement in Taipei, the capital of Taiwan. And at some point, the city was destroying this, saying that because it's unofficial, it's not even mapped, so it cannot be. There is no place for this. But then the other side of the city was like calling me in and say, stop this destruction, that here are more or less 400 households living in their own conditions. They have built this place. So what to do? So then we reversed this process. It had been bulldozing the first 3 steps of the terraced settlement, destroyed the farms because this is an urban farming community, and sort of cut off all the connections between the different houses, like the nervous network of an urban organism, and left them slowly dying there. So we restarted the farms, and we start building the steps, bridges between the houses, so it becomes an organism again, instead of like individual houses. Time limit was very, very short. I had 3 weeks to do this, so wood is the fastest material to gain architectural scale. I couldn't go home anymore, but now he can, and so on. And but same time, when we are there, I'm from Finland. It's a frozen country, and this is like a subtropical, very different for me. So of course I understand people, but I didn't understand the nature there. What is the placemaking of nature? Like the role of nature in like an architectonic scale. And in here, like the jungle, when it came in, and I realized that it's, I don't know, this is 100 times faster than in Finland. I can even think of nature as an architectural element or cooperate with nature. The community is there, okay, I understand that, I cooperate with them, but bam, then this big voice of nature is stepping in. And then I realized that the whole settlement is actually a ruin. It's like a balance between human and nature sort of inhabiting the same place or place making. And this ruin became big for me. Like ruin is something man-made that has become part of nature. It's a high quality. Usually we see ruin like a romantic or something, but no, it's a real thing. How nature wants to read us and our places and our architecture. So that leads to the thinking of like a post-industrial city or third generation city. How can our cities or places learn to become part of nature? I think that's the only question. This one is a matriarchal society or community. It's there is an anarchist grandmother called Mrs. Chen, who is sort of like running the show. So this is Mrs. Chen. And she kind of like adopted me so I could get into their like collective mind or subconscious deeper and actually start working on the place, not just dictating or designing. And so we start to interview these kind of persons, like local knowledge professors, like Mrs. Chen and Benjamin and so on, who really know how the city goes with nature, how the place is. And for that, we set up an unofficial research center called Ruin Academy. So we occupy a 5 floors high apartment building in the center of Taipei and make that like a multidisciplinary research center. We knock off all the interior walls, we break the windows, we blow open the basement. Here goes some interior wall, and then we start drilling holes to the building, from the roof to the ground, so that it can rain inside. Because when you have water, topsoil and light, you can start growing things. And then this ruining process starts. Instead of windows, we planted bamboo for the window openings to keep the urban noise outside and storm waters and so on. And so it became this kind of like an academic ruin. This is the basement blown open in order to reach the original ground, which is very fictional in the city. Playing cello. Behind the lady is a pile of dirt growing taro. It's a root you can eat. Here is a bed. It's on a wheels. So if it is raining straight on top of you, you can roll to some more dry corner. Some bunk beds for students and researchers, so they can sleep in and then they are working there and gardening same time. Like gardening ideas, but also food. Some sort of plant. Student activities or research activities. And then we are in the center of the city. So a lot of like neighbors, if we do things wrong, they will kick us out. So, and you don't talk to normal people with drawings, like especially architectural drawings. That's like a manifest of control. So we just made a huge model. Okay, what we tried to do, and was like bringing that to the neighbors. Like, is this okay? And there's like, why not? And then we could communicate. But this communicative design is hard when it comes to placemaking or these kind of activities. How to communicate? So this is the actual situation. Some sort of caveman style. Guy is burning. And sauna on the 5th floor, of course. So this is like the real hardcore, like information center. Best sauna in the Pacific. Some facades, the trees are growing out, this time bamboo, but this is a big thing. This is an urban bonsai. This is like a sort of core of placemaking. This is how nature is reading architecture. So this tree, I've been following this since 2010. So it hasn't grown an inch, it's the same. This is existence maximum. So he knows exactly how much like a wind is blowing topsoil inside, how much water is coming in, what is the wind condition, and how to use the human-made, the man-made architecture as the primary structure. It's living there. And this is like a sister of it. Different corner, but this is 5 floors high. And the roots are not touching ground. So get really curious, like how is this happening? So we hired a structural engineer with a scanning device. Like, where are the roots going? And after, let's say, a week, he reported back and said, there is 2 sets of roots. One set of roots is going to the water and sewage system. And the other set of roots is going to the concrete slabs of the building. So it's holding the whole building as a primary structure. And it knows exactly how much people are flushing toilet and using the water. And it's living from that. So this tree would not be here without architecture. It would not be here without people. Okay, so then we get the report, and the people in the house, they get like freaked out. Okay, this is it. So now you know, so get rid of the tree. So then the structural engineer said, no, if I cut the tree away, the roots in your concrete slabs, they will shrink, you know, and the whole building will come down. So tree must be here. This is the 3rd generation condition, you know, human and nature living together, and must be so. No other way. And nature goes the same in every way, in every scale. Like the only question from nature, what regards for a city, for example, is how the city can learn to become part of nature in all the scales. This is what normal people do. The pink building on the left-hand side is the World Trade Center in Taipei, and this is the most expensive land in Taipei city. So 3 banks have been fighting for decades for it. It's too expensive. None of them can get control. So the anarchist grandmothers attack, and they claim the place and turn it into a community garden, urban farm. It's a total culture. Children come from the school, they go to the containers, they do homework, they carry the water to the grandmothers and so on. Small slaves, but still learn all the time and is touched to the original ground. This is a real culture. And these are all these punctual interventions in Taipei Basin where the normal people sort of are breaking the city. This is a real map of urban acupuncture. The illegal gardens, community farms, and settlements, and so on. And same time, they're subconsciously or collectively subconsciously tuning the city towards the organic. Taipei Basin, 7 million people. And this is the official solution. You have mechanical industrial guy on the other side, 12 meters high, reinforced concrete wall, and then is the nature. Absolute no connection. But this is not the granny style. So this is what we are studying with the Ruin Academy so far: illegal architecture, urban acupuncture, river urbanism, urban nomad, organic machine, parasite urbanism. All these are related to placemaking, like original placemaking. But these are not like our academic ideas. These are what the grannies are telling us. Then, just in the end, like what the local knowledge can really do. This is insect architecture. So the place is in Shenzhen, South China, and all the Chinese cities are built with migrating workers. They come from countryside. If they come from countryside, of course they have local knowledge, but in the city, they cannot apply it. So then we talk to these guys, like, what do you really want? And they say, we need a social, like some place. Okay, we make you a place. What can you really build instead of those skyscrapers? And these guys were from a province called Guangxi. So say, we can build anything from bamboo. So then we just sketched 1-to-1 scale on the site, and the guys were building, and there is, the material cost is 0. It's just harvested bamboo. And there is no nails, no industrial connectors, nothing. It's just a bucket. And then they pile this dirt on one side. I was asking, like, why do we have to pile the dirt? But I couldn't understand the answer. But this is weak architecture. It's just a bucket made of zero budget, but it's still so strong that when you go inside, the city disappears totally. It's like getting into some architectural organism. The microclimate is much better. They wanted to have this stage because they want to do karaoke and play guitar. So okay, stage and fireplace. It's all just junk waste. Nighttime they would put like one construction light inside and turn into a disco. Very interesting lines, because these are lines of local knowledge, like meeting the lines of like industrial development. This is what they really can do. We call this bug dome. Some curators from Shenzhen, Hong Kong Triennale or Biennale, bosses of the migrating workers. Some karaoke event is cooking up. But this is what they really know. So local knowledge means understanding nature as the co-architect. And the key is laziness. The more you understand, the more lazy you can be. That's how nature goes. So in here too, like placing this little bit of dirt, they knew that the creepers would overgrow. It would totally camouflage in the city. Nobody would find them. Microclimate would be even better. It's just a fantastic work. And like there is no architect. This guy is from Guangxi and some sort of structure and nature. And then this place comes. Very important for them. Okay, thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Marco. That was incredible. It's really enlightening to see how you think of the city, the urban fabric in so many different dimensions, the ways of co-architecting with nature, and those essential elements that help nature be a co-architect and collaborator in design.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you soon, and thank you so much. I want to welcome our next guest, Evelina, who is going to be giving us some scientific perspective on biomes and measuring soil and water and all of these different elements that we're dealing with in our different contexts.
Hello, everybody. My name is Evelina Shumkute, and I'm going to share my screen and show you some of the work that myself and my colleagues been doing. Right. Okay. Let's see whether I can make it work. No.
Oh, it's,
wrong
I always share.
There we go. And wrong place. There we go. And I can minimize this. No, it's showing where we are. So I'm an artist and a placemaker in Kaunas, Lithuania, and here the image is very wisely showing where we are based. We're based in a Kaunas city in neighborhood of Šilainiai, which is a multi-story sort of council estate looking area post-Soviet. And the place where I work is a First World War heritage site. It's a fort built for defense military purposes more than 100 years ago. And this fort is about 10 hectares of land. And for the past, and the neighborhood, which is about 50,000 people, and this Soviet architecture was built in 1980s. So when this neighborhood was built, of course, lots of new people moved in and started naturally creating their environment around themselves in a way that they knew, or depending on their needs. And of course, in Lithuanian mentality, in our culture, cultivating land and being very close to nature is what we need to live. And seeing this abandoned military fortress in the neighborhood did not go unnoticed. And of course, it was started to get used by these. I love the expression anarchist grandmothers in Taipei. So this was anarchist grandmothers and grandfathers of Kaunas, Lithuania, who were amazing. And I have an image of them here. This is part of the community, and they're really amazing people that grow food next to their home, look after the area, and make it just beautiful, natural place as it is now. And there are some of them. Angele, Genute, Elvira, Anele, and Aldana. They have so much knowledge, and I really agree with the previous presenter, with this local experts who know everything about growing food, about nature, etc. So I got involved in 2018, trying to make these gardens legal also, so they would continue for many years to come, and be part of the city, supported by the city as well, and by the heritage professionals and all the people that are involved in this area. And we started these raised beds and involving youth and children and families, growing in 1 square meter raised beds, growing potatoes and all sorts of things. And all the knowledge comes from these local experts who have them. We also do workshops, continuing this make it yourself, do it yourself perspective of making benches and what we need in the area. But of course, what we're talking now is about nature, and the area is quite big, it's quite vast. And last year, pandemic hit everywhere, and we were outside so much more, exploring our neighborhood, and this seeing, maybe a lot of people saw for the first time, this beautiful meadows that in middle of July blossom in the fort area. And the smell is just so sweet. It's just wonderful. And seeing all the different colors was just really, really beautiful. And also realizing for the first time that we do not know the nature that surrounds us in this neighborhood, in our city. And how can we learn about our environment? So the first thing that we did, as we invited some naturalists and educators to help us discover, the community members to discover nature for the first time, and to look for bugs, to look for insects, to look for animals and plants that grow in our neighborhood, and to know for the first time. So we organized a series of events about biodiversity in the area. We were using app, Naturalist. So we have an online map, live building throughout the year, and we continue this year, and really engaging so much more into with our environment. It was, I'd say, one of the most rewarding educational experiences ever that I had a pleasure to coordinate. And also we invited then ornithologists, because part of the fortress structure is under the ground. So we have tunnels, and it's Natura 2000 area that we really know nothing about. So we invited ornithologist Mindaugas Kirstukas to tell us all about rare bats that sleep in the fort tunnels in winter. And we were going into the tunnels and saw some bats before they went to sleep. And really what that made us, the community, for the first time sort of realizing the value that nature has for us, and the value that we have on our doorstep, and also the relationship that we have with this place also changed quite dramatically. And this is the image of the place last year in August. And as you can see, there's sort of hills, there's tunnels under the ground. One of the sides has been looked after for the past 4 years, a little bit more, mowing grass, etc. And the other part is left more wild for sort of like a nature reserve, more a forest than a park, which you can go and explore as well. But for a very long time, of course, it was abandoned. So this did not go, unfortunately, without its effects. And what we noticed through this biodiversity search activities that were so much fun and engaging, that actually the water in the area looks very strange. It has lots of green moss. It has bluish, grayish color. And there's so many hidden spots with piles of rubbish. So the question was raised by the biodiversity experts saying, well, there might be something in the water. You might want to check that out. So what we did, our next step was to contact Vytautas Magnus University, professionals from environmental science, and try to research the quality of our water and our soil in this military area, which was military area for 100 years ago. So what we did, we collected samples. It was very much do-it-yourself process. I really wanted to do it with community, but we're in quarantine, so samples were collected from 20 centimeters and also water, and really focusing on areas that are sort of lower, tried to identify spots that might have pollution or have been highlighted by biodiversity experts, or maybe and the ones that maybe are okay, that have been looked after by those anarchist grannies from the neighborhood. So this is the map that we did, and all the samples that we collected, and that were 10 soil samples and 6 water, and we focused on the areas that we thought had some signs, visual signs, or had a lot of action happening. So what we found was that some of the areas were quite, try to hide this, were quite good, and I'm not a scientist, so if you would like more data or raw data, I will share the website that you can reach and delve more into what we found. And we're doing more research, but some of the areas were not great, and really for concern and need more research, and also soil quality. We saw 2 areas that were, so as you can see, sample sort of 1, 2, 9, 10, 8, oh yeah, 8, 9, 10, that were really problematic. And going back to the map, so we distinguished these 2 areas. So top right, top left, needed more work, and we started the next step, what to do, how to apply this research and help nature, because we have a big community. How can we how we can help nature and take our pollution away. So First thing is, of course, picking up all this rubbish that have been dumped over the years and focusing on one area. We started a month ago, the cleanup action in one of the corners, and the cleanup is going on now. And also to think of how can we encourage different plants. So scientists' suggestion was to think about different plants that absorb pollution from the ground, and also CO2, and then we can cut it and use it for other purposes as well. That it's not only cleaning ground, that's not only look good in the park as the area become, but also do more things. So oh my goodness, I can't say that word. Phytoremediation. Okay, there we go. Right, and these are the partnerships that we have right now. And this is the contacts. I'm gonna share the website with you for more information if you want raw data. But what was the sort of amazing moment that happened with all this biodiversity exploration, with lots of families and children and the grandparents as well, understanding the how our neighborhood has changed, how green it is, sort of trying to touch the value that we have and trying to appreciate it more, as the city is changing very, very rapidly, and it's developing, it's growing, and all of these spaces that are green that we do not know about, maybe how valuable they are and how beautiful they are, how many wonderful creatures live in this environment, might be lost. So for me, the experience was very, very important from that perspective as well. And as a person living in this neighborhood too, I'm also very much passionate about it being livable place for not only nature, not only humans, but also for nature, and to be in harmony with this heritage that we have as well. I will look into the questions. Can you share the slide info again, please? Yep, were families concerned about their youth when heavy metals were discovered? Arts installation, waste collected, arts installation.
Evelina,
yes.
well, we have to move on to the next speaker, but it was
sorry
to hear about that discovery process that you went on with the community. We're definitely seeing that that's a best practice, and so many people want to just show up with a rendering as the start, and there's no dialogue, there's no engagement, there's not a discovery process and a translation process of some of the maybe technologies being used with the built environment and local knowledge. And that's a beautiful process. I think you illustrated really wonderfully. So thank you so much. And we're gonna shoot across the Atlantic to America, to the top of a mountain in Denver, where Anna, who is a landscape architect leading a big office there and has done work all over, is going to be showcasing some of her work as well.
Thank you, Ryan. Spoiler alert, I don't have grannies in my presentation. I'm sorry about that. I will think about that in the future. As Ryan said, I am a co-director of the Denver office. I'm a landscape architect. Just really quickly, Sasaki is a 300-person interdisciplinary firm. We're urban designers, planners, landscape architects. And we really have 3 offices. We're based in Boston, Massachusetts. We have a Shanghai office and then a new Denver office, which we opened 6 months ago. And so I'm actually out here in Denver, Colorado. Our passion at Sasaki is about creating great public spaces, and it's really at the intersection of planning, architecture, and landscape architecture that we can really define meaningful public spaces. And we can only do that when we start to think about nature and how we really embed nature into our design and our work. So today, as a landscape architect, I could spend probably hours on each of these projects, but I'm going to spend as quickly as I can on 3 projects talking about how we designed with water, how we are looking at a changing climate, and then really how we design with topography. So the first project, we're gonna go way south in the United States to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to Greenwood Park and talk about a cypress bayou. We were hired about 2 years ago to look at the master plan for Greenwood Park. It's a 660-acre park. It's really seen as a regional park, and we wanted to look at making this a neighborhood park, but also a regional destination. One of the first things we did in the analysis of Greenwood Park was to look at the natural environment as well as the built environment. How can we overlay systems to start to identify opportunities, but areas that are functioning quite well and areas that we really want to preserve with our natural ecosystems. So in the green, you can start to see some of these areas that we said this needs to be preserved and highlighted in the park. And then some of the white areas were kind of opportunities. One of the systems we did a deep dive into was the water. Louisiana has a lot of flooding, and this park has actually experienced a lot of flooding. And the first phase, which we just broke ground, actually is in a floodplain. And so we had an opportunity to look at improving the flooding and actually use this park as a way to kind of be a sponge and help improve systems downstream. And this is important because Baton Rouge floods. In 2016, it had one of the worst floods in the history. And this wasn't because of a hurricane or a big storm. It was just a lot of consistent rainfall. And it flooded because a lot of the natural systems weren't functioning the way they were supposed to because of urbanization. And one of those systems is a bayou. A bayou is not a river. A bayou is a flat, marshy, soggy, slow-moving water system. And when we started to look at the bayou system that was on Greenwood Park, we noticed that historically, and this is important, in 1954, you can see this blue line, it meandered. It had the form of a natural bayou system. But then as we came in and looked at systems like we do as humans, we tended to channelize it, to engineer it. And so currently the bayou system is dammed, and then the straight channel, which is not allowed to function in the way that a bayou historically does. So we started to look at flood patterns within Greenwood Park. And what we started to notice is that it would flood in these sort of U's, which was the historic bayou channel, the alignment that it used to be. And so we noticed there was opportunities to actually redesign the bayou system and make it so that you could have these channels so that it would flood. And so when a large rain event happened, like in 2016, you could actually hold the water on the site and really prevent downstream flooding. So our design, like I said, we're just breaking ground on this, but it really is about looking at those natural systems, but bringing people into that natural system, because it's one thing to restore it, but then it's another thing to educate individuals, educate the community on the importance of a bayou. Why does it look like this? Let's allow people to get up close and personal to a bayou. So now I'm gonna jump out and scale and talk about something completely different, which is a research project that I've been leading with a team at Sasaki, as well as the National Recreation and Parks Association, NRPA. And we really started to talk about climate change at a conference about 3 years ago, really talking about climate change on the coast. And whenever we think about climate change in the United States, it really tends to be around sea level rise, flooding, big storm events. And I realized at this conference that, everywhere is experiencing climate change, but there's kind of this missing body of research in the center of the country. And with discussions with NRPA, we realized that there is an area in our cities that can really help with climate change, that can help adapt and mitigate, and that's our park systems. So what if we created a toolkit that really looked at the issues that the Intermountain West and the middle of the country is facing with climate change? And then what if we came up with strategies that allow parks departments and agencies and community members to start to implement those design tools to help mitigate and adapt climate change? We started off this research by doing a series of one-on-one interviews. We wanted to ask park agencies, what are the biggest issues, both perceived and actual, that you're experiencing? And what are the strategies you're using? What's the lack of data? Where are the lack of sort of information and tools that you need to help dive into design? We then did our own internal research and really looked at mapping white papers and tried to overlay data that we found with what we were hearing from park agencies. So the Toolkit is a website, an interactive website, which allows you to sort of look at climate change in these three aspects. One, by location, two, by strategies, and finally, three, by how this could be implemented in a park. So we have these pilot city projects. I should say that this is just being tested right now. We've been doing this research for 1.5 years, and we're spending the next month trying to break the website. And then at the end of April, it'll actually be public to everyone. So you can come into our landing page. You can type in where your county is. And we're starting with the Intermountain West with the goal of hopefully having future funding to really expand this from the inside of the country to the outside to the coast that already do have a lot of research. But you can come in and at a county level, you can figure out how wildfire is really impacting your park system or your city. And then you can look at strategies for each of those issues and threats associated with climate change. And then the strategies, we have little graphics for every single strategy because we want this to be user-friendly. It can be pretty heady, pretty fast when you talk about climate change and the science around it. But we want anybody to come in and quickly understand a strategy and then have opportunities to really dive into detail. And then those strategies are divided into 3 systems. One, operations and maintenance, because if you do a fantastic job designing a park, but you're not talking about how to maintain it or operate it, you're going to lose all of that investment. Ecosystem functionality, and then park users and access. So the last project I'm going to talk about is in the Intermountain West. So I wanted to kind of stay in this area. It's the Dunky Arts Plaza out in Ogden, Utah. I know Ryan's very familiar with Ogden, Utah. It's this amazing, creative, small town. We're working in the 9 Rails Creative District. So it's actually kind of this catalytic place that has brought in artists from all over the world. And they're really looking at designing both an art plaza and really reinvesting in this downtown area. When we started our research and thinking about nature in the site, we actually zoomed out in history and not just, a couple years looking at floods. We went all the way back to the formation of Utah, looking at how Salt Lake City was created and then how that geography really and geology informed our design. We also looked, if you say Ogden, here's Utah here, looked at a cross section to understand how nature and the environment really inform the city, how this place was created all the way from the lake to the mountains. What we quickly realized is that, Ogden, Utah, while being this tiny town, has this incredible connection to nature, maybe not physically in the small plaza space, but visually. And so we started to look at environmental systems and doing this analysis of sun and shade and where we could really bring people outside. And then we also worked with our software engineers and started to look at data visualization and noticing that nature doesn't always mean that you're connected right there, but you actually need to visually connect to nature to have an appreciation. So where on this plaza could you get people up and connected to nature? And we use that and really nerded out for a minute to look at where we might want to bring up heights in the plaza to connect and have that visual cue back to nature, back to the mountains. I didn't mention in the projects until this one about community engagement. Every single project we do has community engagement, has community voices. And again, I could spend a whole presentation on just our engagement, but I thought it was important to mention this because this plaza really was about placemaking and placemaking before the project even started. So we sort of had this grassroots movement for placemaking, and we worked with Union Creative Agency. And engagement doesn't have to be expensive and flashy. It can be quick and easy to ask people how they would use this space. We use that information in our very nerdy analysis to come up with concept designs. And then we went back out to the community and said, out of these 3 concepts, how would this art plaza work best for you? How do you want to use this space? And ultimately that led to this art plaza that we're calling the Folded Plains, that has this plinth that allows you to get up and have views back to the mountains. then also really to create this canvas for arts, to create this canvas for nature, and to have that experience. And we don't want the plaza to overwhelm those sort of inherent elements that we're bringing into the site. And then finally, we did this whole project during the pandemic. And so a lot of our engagement was virtual, but we wanted to allow people to get out on site and actually experience some of this while being safe. And so our local consultants actually spray painted the design on the vacant lot. And then we had a socially distanced event, and we had kind of pop-up performances so people could come experience and see the site. And really those performances were about bringing the community to the place. So before we broke ground, we really wanted to bring people here and get them excited about the site. And so in conclusion, while this is about designing with nature and really thinking about natural systems, if you don't have that curiosity or that community or nature, you really are missing out on a piece of a really great, important piece of a public realm. So thank you for that.
Okay. Wow, Anna, that's fantastic. And I really loved seeing the data visualization of some of these underlying systems that help contribute to the places that we're working with, and how, you know, when you fix something up the stream, so many things then will fix themselves down the stream. And so where we apply our energy, I think, you know, a common mistake we see with placemaking is they think it's the decoration, it's the last step, but really it's wanting to work with the community to understand the place and how to liberate the life-giving properties of it and create social cohesion around it, not just decoration. And then I really also really appreciated your explanation of the use of heights, because I live in the Los Angeles floodplain and you can never see anything. And I really enjoy when you're on a hill somewhere, or, you know, you can see different depths and backgrounds, and also peer over the fence. So I really appreciate some of those lessons and all of those incredible graphics you shared. I really wowed people.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you for continuing to present.
Yeah, and then there was a couple questions in the chat if you have a chance to answer, like, do you do work internationally? Some folks like to talk, and so on. So thank you. And I know we're going to be deep diving with you again into some other projects, because you have quite a breadth of working in different biomes and in really interesting restorations. And
it was hard to distill it down to just a few minutes. I was like, oh, this is the most challenging thing I'm going to do all week. So thanks.
And I know, like, a lot of people doing Placemake Earth Challenge, they get intimidated. Like, oh, I don't have time to create a public parklet plaza in the next month. But really, any action you're seeing, any step of these processes you're seeing is a great Placemake Earth project. Putting some note cards on an empty lot and asking people what they want to do with it. You know, getting together some community members for some citizen science in a park. The idea is that Placemake Earth is getting people together in your community and starting these conversations and doing something simple and achievable so that the ball can keep rolling in the right direction with more people on board. So don't be intimidated when you see these awesome projects, because they will happen. Everything starts small with the interactions of a few people. So we're going to go on to our last speaker before we do some interactive work and sort of set the tone for what's going to be happening over the next few weeks with everybody. And that's our good friend Guillermo in Mexico, the leader of the Placemaking Mexico Network.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm going to share now my screen. Just give me a second. So I'm Guillermo Bernal. I'm the executive director of Fundación Placemaking Mexico. The foundation, it's an organization that supports other organizations here in Mexico to create sustainable public spaces. So what we believe as an organization is sharing knowledge and sharing capacities towards our network of friends and allies around our country. So just give me a second and I do this every day. I don't know why right now it's not working. Okay, doesn't. Can you see my screen now? Not really, right?
Not yet. Can
Not
you
yet.
Not yet. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna start speaking, and I'm gonna connect in another computer so we don't lose time. So we started this organization actually 2 years ago with this 8 years of work in another organization called Lugares Públicos, with the support of Pray for Public Spaces, Ethan Kent, all the Kent family, and a lot of great friends in Pray for Public Spaces. And what we believe is sharing our knowledge is the way to change and to transform our country and our region. So this is basically our main focus of work. And what we believe is that if we need to change and we want to change our country, our regions, our world, we need to share our knowledge. It's impossible to change everything by ourselves. So with these ideas, we started the foundation in Mexico, and the pandemic showed us something very clear. We could work 42 different projects in Mexico last year, actually without moving from Mexico City. So we traveled around the north and the south, 1,000 kilometers away, with our network of friends and allies. So this is basically our strength, sharing and creating a different impact. So we use 3 different ideas. The first is sharing and proposing methodologies in a shared environment. So with this, we created this milieu of organizations here in Mexico, of small organizations actually, that could help us implement parks, open streets, social distancing, physical distancing activities with social connections, and very different projects into the country. The second one was thinking that the money is not the main focus of what drive us and make us work. What makes us is the social impact. So taking out money and from the equation help us understand that the impact is the most important. Of course, we use different kinds of donations, in-kind donations and donations to support organizations, but taking out this budget idea was what make us stronger, so that we could implement 42 projects using lighter, quicker, cheaper methodology from placemaking, but also understanding that our capacity is more into helping people than actually helping ourselves and our organizations. And that is what helps us in the impact. And the third, it's understanding that what we are constructing and what we are doing is fixing more the social and the construction of the community rather than the public space. Of course, we implement places and we create places. And I will share you later here in the chat my annual report, where we explain the 42 different interventions we work in Mexico. But for me, the key part is, rather than the 1,000 square meters of public space we created last year, is the stories of the people we impacted. So this little girl in Tijuana, Mexico. Tijuana is a border city in between Mexico and the US, with very complicated and so hard social construction. There's the immigration problem. There's inequalities. It's the most inequality city I have ever seen, with these amazing golf courts, but also these shanty towns in the other side. But this story of this little girl that wanted to do a mural, and we just could, because our connections here in Mexico City, we could connect with a painting and houseware shop called the Home Depot. And with them, we could get her the in-kind donations to create the mural. That creates the impact we are looking for. And many stories like this. There's people also in another border city called Reynosa. It's in the border between McAllen, Texas. How these little girls could use just the shadow of their trees around their park just to play and to be there, rather than bringing, and it was really nice, bringing color, bringing benches, bringing this community garden, just bringing this story to them to get out from their house and using their public space. That's what drives us as an organization. So my conclusion towards you guys implementing these challenges is stop thinking about where we will get the funding. Start just thinking about the people. Start first thinking, not really thinking about the scale of the project. Start thinking about how many people and how many stories you will share and you will touch. And the third is share what you know. We do have methodologies, toolboxes, ideas, books, but share it with others, because creating the impact and creating the change in the world we need right now is about sharing our knowledge. And of course, and in that, my experience is, and I'm 34 years old, I just have 10 years of experience doing this, but my experience is when you share your knowledge, you create for yourself even more knowledge, and the capacity of the others also grow. So please, I will show you my presentation in here, so you have it with all the pictures and also my reports, so later you can have a look. So thank you, Ryan. I'm sorry for my technical difficulties.
No problem. And if you get a chance to pull it up or drop it in the chat, I'm sure we'd love to see these 42 projects. But even so, I think the lessons you're sharing of not focusing on the budget, the impact, you know, at least I can say in the US and my experience, there's a lot of ownership feeling when someone has an idea and they don't want others to know about their idea. And the idea suffers because they're of that fear of sharing and code developing and collaborating on that idea. And I also think we're also, like, a lot of this work is grant funded, and so, you know, you're trying to get the grant, and then you got to create the project at exactly that scale. And you can see how that is really a process that it doesn't solve as many problems as what you're talking about, getting to work organically, authentically, in a connected way, and you can do so much more. So hopefully we can break a little bit out of some of those systems and make them a little bit more like what you've been accomplishing over your 10 short years. So we'll give you a minute to figure that out. And in the meantime, Tina, did you want to kickstart that next section? Or, oh no, Todor, right? You're going to introduce the next section of interactivity.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Actually, I'm very sad that I didn't see the Mexican pictures or the technical difficulties, because my wife is Mexican and I kind of mix Mexico like crazy. So I was very sad about that. But anyway, I just want to tell you that I guess you see my screen at this point. I am not going to do the presentation, like the present mode, so it's easier. Okay, let's do it. The whole point is, I think I really like what we're touching upon here, because that's exactly like that kind of environment and that kind of ideas, like notion. This is what we're trying to create with this initiative. Basically, of course, now we see all of these amazing projects. As Ryan said, this should not stress us out. I mean, even small details of this, creating awareness, it's all we would like to achieve here. and of course, learn from each other. This is part of a few sessions and few steps process. And as you can see, we are here now. I don't know if you see actually my mouse, but we are in the step 2. So basically, it doesn't mean that you should have had all of your plan laid out already. You basically can even start doing it now and still can achieve something small. And that's why we're here, to encourage each other to do this. So, I mean, we realized from the last session and also from private conversations that we had with someone that we are on different level here. There are people that are working with years in this field in placemaking. So naturally, this makes us more comfortable of doing whatever in public space or with our immediate communities and so on. But what I want to say is that there is a lot of materials, and I'll share it in the chat. This one as well is from Project for Public Space. If you're totally new to this, don't worry. I mean, it's still the whole approach, the whole concept of placemaking is actually to be hands-on, to be something that you should not be extremely high professional to start doing it. I mean, a lot of people do placemaking without being educated in any kind of spatial design whatsoever. So the message here is don't get stressed. And what we try to do here now, and we'll show you some examples. This presentation is recorded, so don't stress too much if you don't see all of the steps here for the tools that we kind of adapted for you. That if you're stressed out and if you don't know what you want to do in this challenge, we just want to propose you 2 techniques, tools that you can really start playing around in the next weeks or so and see what comes up with it. The first one is Photovoice. Well, these are adapted versions for our goals here, but the whole point is it's really like start observing with that tool is to start observing the environment around you. So basically reflect on it and document it. And basically go with some simple questions and without overthinking, just record videos, record photographs, and then look at this material and look what the environment tells you. And what we had, and repeat this process as much as you want. What we have as a kind of a sidetrack of this is that we also, since we are this cohort that we would like to learn from each other and co-develop things together, we can also introduce a hashtag that we will like to share the materials together, probably in the common event that we will have. That again, Ryan probably will be the person that will share with you after that, and this will be the place also where everybody can feel free to send us questions or suggestions or ideas. And the second tool that we think that is very important, that also is good to experiment with, despite everything, like despite whether you have clear idea or not in your mind, is really look around, look at your immediate surroundings and search for the organizations, people, neighbors that are doing something related to what we're trying to focus on here, because there are a lot of things happening. It doesn't mean that you have to do it alone. Better not do it alone even. So really probably think about what your idea is, what kind of keywords you would like to focus on, and then scan around with this through either social media, send inquiries to people. Hey, can you recommend me, or do you know somebody working with that? And probably even join some effort. That's also a way to proceed here. That said, I would like to give the word to Ryan, who will show actually a better, will exemplify these methods and how you can play around with them, to see that the whole point here is that we should not be scared. It's something simple. Even if we just raise awareness, even if we do just something small, it's okay. It's still part of the process of a greater goal or idea that we have in our mind. So, Ryan?
And we've been starting to do this already. And so I can kind of show you a little bit. Here we go. So we've been looking around with our Placemake Earth eyes, and we want you guys to do this too over the next 3 weeks and kind of focus in on what we're hearing about, what we're talking about, and really see it reveal itself in your community to you because it's been there and you might not have picked up on it. Like just the other day, I was getting gas and I looked up and I saw that the gas station was made up of solar paneled cells, which is not necessarily the most sustainable thing, but it was definitely very interesting to see that and recognize that and think immediately of you guys and Placemake Earth. And then I just sort of laughed when I looked up and saw this yesterday, and this creative sort of use of upside down cooler plants, and just seeing this sort of nature as everywhere. And also taking up opportunities that come your way that relate to this. So someone offered to give me a tour of a park in Long Beach, California last week. And I might have said, yeah, maybe, you know, let's do that later. But I jumped at it and went on this tour with the park, the city employee who created this park. And I'd been at this park before it was a park, and it used to look like this. It was actually, it's an oil field with 22 oil rigs in it and a cement recycling plant next to it, and not a place you want to spend too much time. And now it's been turned into this complete ecological restored oasis, and with all these little vignettes through it. And I saw, you know, oh wow, look at what's happened over time. And I noticed, oh, Studio MLA, they were the landscape architect on this project. They're very involved in Placemaking US. So new connections were suddenly apparent to me just by spending some more time in this space. And although the landscape architect did a lot, the real credit for this ecological restoration goes to this really overzealous, nut, passionate city employee who's the head of the Office of Sustainability at the city. And he kind of took that property under his arms and took us on a tour. And it was full of, I think, Placemake Earth lessons that I want to just show with you, because any of these things would be great things to share with the group. But they had to cut down this tree right at the entrance of the park. And so he explained that they cut it down at a climbing height so that kids, when they would see it, they'd immediately want to climb up on this thing. So turning this, you know, problem into a new opportunity. Oh, and he also said at one point they attached a slide to it, but somebody had removed it. He suspects Parks and Rec department. But then they had to cut down some other trees. And so instead of, you know, just getting rid of them or whatever, they actually organized them into a peace sign. I don't know if you can see it from this angle. You'd probably need one of Anna's purchase to get over and really see it perfectly. But this was a really cool way to use some leftover logs. And then there was, you know, stories we were told about the park, like this area is the only place white sage grows, and it's a very coveted smell. And so people come here and collect it. And so there's kind of a threat to the park. So I promise I didn't pick, I just sniffed. And we saw these little vignettes, as I mentioned, and it was interesting because, so for this material, instead of going out and, I don't know, building something or digging up more materials, they used old rubble from the 1933 earthquake that had happened in our town. So there's this sort of nod to this cool moment. Larry pointed out there's some mixed use habitats in some mixed use residential going on in the park. There was animals that were burrowing in, and there were some lessons to be learned here that come into play later when you kind of look at what's going on there with these sticks covering a hole where an animal's keeping cool. They'd repurposed sort of leftover industrial materials. So this is a capped oil rig, and they turned it into a theater in the round. So it's a good place to see some Shakespeare, have a little community meeting. There's some issues at the park. Some of the signage is destroyed, and you know, signage is really important when it comes to nature. So they had all this great information, but it was most of it was unreadable. There's actually a 1 acre farm that has a lease in this park and does a flower subscription and sells microgreens to the local restaurants. This is the Office of Sustainability's office. So they set up a cargo container in the park, and they have this really wackadoo office that's basically made up of old parts of the city. So there'll be an event, and the stage gets, you know, broken down, and they'll collect the materials and return it into items. And they've rehabbed and taken all these elements here to create what is pretty much an idyllic, beautiful enclosed space, but it's made up of junk. And then going back to that animal hole, they kind of showed us this technique, and it's something that we've talked about, that heat island effects and the heat in urban environments is one of our huge problems that we're facing with climate change. And so they put this sort of fairyland door on this sort of area of brambled willow a thrush of willow sticks. And when you go through this magical space, you're suddenly in a room created by nature that's 5 to 10 degrees cooler, just like what the animal was doing in the side of the hill. And so one other feature that I think is really important, because a lot of the issues affecting our different contexts has been water, hydrology, either too much or too little or both in the wrong places at the wrong time. And so what's really interesting is when you think back to how this property originally looked as a barren, kind of dusty field, why does it have this beautiful meandering stream in it? And why is there this artisanal well where spring water is bubbling up from under the earth to feed that stream? Well, it's a bit of an illusion, but we're using a lot of these natural forces that we're talking about. So essentially, this park was the original artesian well of the city. Settlers found this bubbling brook and they were drinking water from it. Native Americans lived at the confluence of these two rivers. This has been a very important place for a long time. But as they developed the city, they actually made this bowl above the park, which was a reservoir. But later it was no longer a reservoir and it became part of the city's stormwater system. So now what's happening here is stormwater is coming through from the streets down into the sewer, and then popping out through in this channel, and it goes around the bowl, and it's supposed to go out into the Los Angeles River and then be dumped into the ocean, where it will find its way to the fish and all of you lovely people. And so what Larry has done here, and so what the bowl does now is that during flood conditions, the theory is that the water goes down the right, and then it floods over into the bowl where it's in this catch basin until it can flood out to the ocean. Well, what Larry did was Larry put a little stick or a little door down at the bottom right, and he blocked the flow of the sewer into the ocean. And he opened up a pipe from the sewer into this holding container and filled this container up. And so now this old piece of infrastructure, which was basically an overflow tank for our sewer system, is now a holding tank for our artesian well and stream that are beautiful to enjoy and walk by, and are slowly feeding this water back into the groundwater where it's replenishing and cleaning versus being dumped into the ocean. So there's a lot of infrastructure here, but when you look at what Larry did, he only did two small things to change this infrastructure to go from dumping 12,000 gallons of water, of dirty water into the ocean a day, to turning that into a lovely place for people to enjoy themselves. And then just on the way out of the park, we saw just these pepper trees, pink peppercorn trees, where the park staff basically has to trim the trees and maintain them, but they use them to create these paths, and they get these peppercorns from them. So I just wanted to illustrate all of these amazing stories. I was very lucky to have a guide, because I tried to take someone here and tell them these stories after, and they were immediately bored. But we were enthralled walking through and seeing all of this amazing stuff. And I hope that you guys will see things like this in your context, and that they'll help inform what you're going to do. And I'm going to pass it over to Tina, who has another story from the other side of the country in Raleigh, similar to mine.
Thanks, Ryan. I'll be real quick here. I'm just trying to give some motivation to, or inspiration for folks who are using these modest projects. So last year, it's unbelievable that it's been a year, we did the same initiative, Tooltest, and I just literally went out my front door and thought, I could plant flowers, wildflowers along my street. And it's kind of an example of how placemaking works. I felt kind of stupid and like, oh, this is dumb. No one will have any effect. But then, I planted some around this road sign at the top of our street in front of our neighbor who's like very tidy and has like a carpet lawn. And so it was kind of a guerrilla gardening effort. And at first he was skeptical, but then he kind of got used to it. And then it made this wonderful little place everyone could walk by along our street. And then I planted in front of my front yard, and it worked. But so this year, what's happened is I've got more neighbors involved. And as you start doing something, it catches fire. He's agreed that we could plant in front of his house again. It's the area, it's not really his property, but it's between the sidewalk and the curb. And then I've got other neighbors who are wanting to have it planted in front of their yards. And actually tomorrow I have a date with a little 4-year-old, and we're going to plant in front of his house together. And then there is a woman up the street who, these are on the corner, and she lives over here. And she is agreed to come and water. I've planted them already, but they haven't sprouted yet. She's going to come over and I've jumped to the other corner too and water them with a watering can regularly to keep them going. So I've enlisted her. She works at the Raleigh City Farm, and she's starting to donate seeds so we can plant even further up and down the street. So just something simple like that, and just to see it evolve over a year is really inspiring and kind of a microcosm of how placemaking works and catches hold. And this is another project I was doing last year, which was for this tool test, and it was using the hashtag Raleigh urban wildlife. And so I was asking people to go out in their city and just observe the wildlife that's around them in the city and post their pictures here. So we got this amazing, array of photographs. Some professional photographers joined in, and people from the Museum of Science, and people posting movies. And here it is, notice the wildlife of your city. And it continues to grow. People are adding to this gallery of urban wildlife, which you're kind of amazed when you realize how much really is around you. So this is, and you get these, you can post videos as well. So those are just two examples of how to, see your environment through a lens of Placemake Earth, and to do something modest, and how it will really catch hold once you get the ball rolling, and even though it may feel kind of awkward at first. Okay, so let's see. Stop sharing. I will. Okay. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, those were great examples of the Photovoice. And so we're asking folks to share their experiences from their own context with this Placemake Earth hashtag over the next couple of weeks. And that way we can kind of, like Guillermo said, add ideas and thoughts to each other's contributions and learn a little bit about each other's context. And then the second tool or lens that I think Todor was talking about today was looking around at what projects are happening, who in the community is working on these things that you've been curious about and maybe want to connect with. And so we've been doing a lot of that locally. And so I just want to share some examples from how I'm connecting it. And this is why we do such a long project process with Placemake Earth or with tool testing, is because instead of just jumping in and doing something, you have a lot of time to think about it, learn about it, and then connect it with things happening in your community. So that process is going on now, and then there'll be some action in mid-April around Earth Day. And so in Santa Ana, where I work with the downtown, what we've done is tied into Placemake Earth by putting up a co-design challenge. So we're actually offering $1,000 in funding to local participants who want to do some kind of co-design with nature in the downtown. And that's nice, of course, when you have a resource like that. So I know not everyone can do that, but it's really great because we're helping connect local people in our community with these ideas, giving them resources to experiment and try with them. And they can kind of self-select if they want to submit an idea, and then we can lower that need for that funding. Another example is the other day we were driving to just check out a garden, and I saw this front lawn native landscaping xeriscape. So I just jumped out of the car and went and knocked on the person's door and introduced myself. And it ended up that they had done the landscaping themselves. They told me where they learned how to do all this stuff, and they had extensive knowledge, and they offered to help me with any landscaping projects in downtown, which were things that we're interested in. And also she worked in food systems at the local college and was in conversations with my boss about doing some work together. So it ended up being very interesting and fortuitous. And I realized that just knocking on the doors of people who look like they're being very responsible might be a great way to connect into your community as well. We also learned about a small grant for mental health resources in our community, and we connected the farmers market with it in Long Beach. And so during the Placemake Earth process, the farmers market happens here. And so during Placemake Earth week, we're going to be doing input gathering at the market. And then in May, there's now funding to do a triptych mural on these 3 walls. So the engagement piece will happen as the Placemake Earth piece here, and then the actual beautification will happen later. Same thing here. This is on a street where it's heavily environmentally impacted by the Port of Long Beach, and this is a small Peruvian restaurant. And so they're going to be turning the back here into a garden, a farm for their restaurant. And so we're going to do a planting the week of the Earth Week. And then in May, there's going to be a food festival introducing the new farm into the community. So these, I utilize Placemake Earth to get these guys really focused on their project and making sure they get a date and getting it done. And we do an important piece of the project during Placemake Earth. We don't necessarily finish the project. The project might be done a month later or something like that, but these are critical steps. Similarly, I shared this project, I think, at our previous webinar. We got a small grant here to turn the interior of this into an art gallery and build a farm stand on the outside. And so the piece that we're going to be doing during Placemake Earth is the spring planting of this garden, so that when the farm stand gets built a month later, it's going to have its food ready, and the art gallery will open at that time as well. So I hope that, to show you these, to show you these examples, because what I'm trying to do locally in my community with Placemake Earth is really use it as a lens, as a focus, and I'm connecting multiple other partners, the people who run the little farm stand, the people who run the farmers market, the neighbor who has a great landscape, and I'm just getting them all engaged and finding out what they're working on and getting them to commit to dates to do their projects. Because a lot of the reason people don't do placemaking is because you could do it tomorrow. And what we're learning with this project especially is that getting started is the key, and then the power of time adds so much when you're working with nature. When you have the systems right and you add time, then things grow. So that's kind of our explanation of that. And I think we're almost at time. So I don't know if you guys want to stop the recording, and then if people have some more questions that they want to go through, and we can kind of hang out and chat more casually about anything that people want to hear, or if you want to keep that recording going. Milena, what do you think?
Well, I think that this has been absolutely amazing webinar. I'm truly very happy to see this amount of people getting more and more engaged with Placemake Earth. I would like to say that maybe we can wrap it up and just invite people to be also the part of the third webinar, which is really going to be more about listening to their ideas and facilitating their ideas after so many tools and so many ideas that we have provided in the first two webinars. And of course, yeah, I would say let's give another 15 minutes for those of us here in this group who would like to chat more informally. But I would like to thank to all our speakers who brought these magnificent stories, and the way they look at the space, the way they look at their profession was really totally refreshing. And also big thank you to you, Ryan, for moderating this. And yeah, let's invite people to keep on following us, and we are going to be back on the third webinar. So I will wrap up the live broadcast now, and leave the stage open for us and people interested. For any other questions, please, you can post them in the Facebook page of the Placemaking Earth event. So we will get back to those answers as well. Thanks a lot. And I have stopped the live stream, so we can now, chill.
And go
Okay.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
just to let you know as well, guys, like this is not like you should not remember all of this. You receive anywhere an email from us with all of these things where you can post questions where you want to, or ideas or so on. So don't stress. The idea of this exercise is really not to stress. It's really to enjoy what we're doing as placemakers. Thank you from me as well.
Okay. I see questions coming in the chat about to post the links to the materials, to the presenters. We have them here in the chat, so we will just copy paste them again on the Facebook page, on the event page of this webinar, but also on the event page of the Placemake Earth. So all the links will be there as well. And yeah, I mean, it was quite intense. Quite intense webinar. I have a question actually for this group here. Are there people among us here in the group that have some idea for the Placemake Earth Day? Can we get some of these preliminary, I wouldn't say commitments, because that's maybe a little bit too hard. But to have a bit more, like
I see
ideas.
Raphael raised his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I live in Malta, in the island of Malta in the Mediterranean, and an enormous amount of military infrastructure all around the island. And in particular, there's an old city wall. It's 350 years old.
Okay.
And that wall has acted as a barrier to development in that area. And the surrounding area has become very urbanized, but the wall has ended up being a place where lots of plants grow. And it's really like this emerald necklace that kind of graces a very overdeveloped part of the island. And the wall was designed so that soldiers could go on top of it. So I'm involved with a group of residents who are interested in doing a kind of a reimagination of this old and obsolete piece of infrastructure into a linear promenade through the sky, kind of like the High Line in New York, except in a completely different context. And obviously, having a green lung in the city, it's good for the urban heat island effect, mitigating that. It's good for so many things. But in this dense area, it also will have mental health benefits, touristic benefits, bird watching, watching the fireworks. You can see the sea from there, the boats going by. So this is an area that has long been considered a place to avoid, and we're really excited about initiating a kind of placemaking community-based process to have it reimagined into a real a treasure of kind of green infrastructure.
That's great to hear, Rafael. Would it be possible to have some, some concepts or drafts of this imagination process for the next webinar, or for the how can we let's say channel or facilitate that for the Placemake Earth Day? Can you make a kind of shape of what could happen on the Placemake Earth Day itself from your side?
Well, I've led several community walks in the past to kind of get people's input and ideas, and I think it would be good to hold another one of those. And someone told me recently that the Jane's Walks Festival is coming up in honor of Jane Jacobs, and I think we could do a series of walks on top of the walls in that context, and then take it as an opportunity to gather people's ideas together, and then kind of iteratively put together a bit of a kind of like a vision board. It also happens that the government has allocated funds to restore the walls, and I have I'm very well acquainted with the architect who's been put in charge of that project. So there's an opportunity for this to really inform the more top-down kind of intentions that the government has.
Great, good to hear. Fantastic, thank you. I see Guillermo. We will be following you, Rafael, and we will be pressuring you to give us inputs on the Placemake Earth Day.
But if I can just say one more thing, I noticed a lot of the projects had an element of adaptive reuse, and I think there's really something ingenious and beautiful about that, almost poetic, taking whether it be like an oil rig and turning it into a place for community, and in this case, it's infrastructure for war and turning it into infrastructure for life.
Wow.
Both plant life, but also human life and thriving. So that's quite exciting.
Excellent.
That's great. And I wish if you could document your community engagement in some way, your walk, and just share some of that, some images and what comes out of that, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be a great contribution for the Placemake Earth Day.
Super.
We can showcase it then.
Great.
Guillermo. Yes.
No. So I'm very sorry about my presentation. I just changed my computer to, I just bought an iPad to have a good camera. So I was suffering from a really bad camera from my old computer. And now I know that iPads are not good to share on Zoom. So something new. So what we two ideas, and that's what we did in 2018 for the Placemaking Latin America event. We started this campaign of small actions that will take place over Latin America before the meetup, the week, the Placemaking week here. So we did something that was actually very successful. Was this hopscotch, like these numbers, and then when kids jump 1 to 10.
Yeah, I know.
And that was so easy, and there was such a big impact. Like we had this hopscotch from Mexico to Argentina, Brazil, Peru, Colombia, and it was so simple, so small, and so powerful to connect. And last year it was a little bit more complicated what we did for Dia de la Tierra, but so the pandemic, and was just starting. But what we did is we asked people who had a net to go outside to their park, add a net, and just play in like badminton or like small tennis. And with this idea also of social physical distance, but this social connection between everybody. So these little things, and that's what we're thinking for this year, like these little actions, but that could be implemented around our country, around with all our network. I think that will be it's easier to implement. We're just looking for this idea, like to see exactly what we're gonna do, but that's a way to have 10, 15, 20 people in the same day doing an action. And hi Ethan, I can see Ethan there in sunny Brooklyn.
Yeah, I see he's here for the most interesting part of the webinar. Guillermo, that's absolutely wonderful. I think that's what would be a very strong message for the Placemake Earth Day itself is if you can, in the style of photo voicing, in the style of photo reportage, if you can send 10 pictures for 10 different locations or 10 different Latin American cities, doing the same hopscotch with different background, I think that would be a very good, it would be a great statement for these small placemaking actions you want to feature and to give the message that actually it's a carpet of small actions that you are rolling out on the Placemake Earth Day. Fantastic. I don't see any other raised hands, but maybe there are some people who are really eager to share with us the first thoughts about what would they like to have as an action on the Placemake Earth Day, because we can now immediately kind of give a brainstorm or group feedback to that kind of idea.
I see Priscilla in the chat has said that, you know, she's very inspired, but she's concerned because the space that she's working in is very limited. And so what I just wanted to offer to her is that the cool thing here is to experiment and to try something. And you don't have to be afraid because you have all of us backing you up. And if you're in Santa Ana, maybe a chance at a little cash too. So that's why we're here. We really want to imbue all of you guys to go a step further into this and take a risk and, you know, connect a little further than you might if you were just by yourself, because we're all watching and we have interest in you succeeding, and we're here for advice or shoulder to cry on, or or to share maybe some method or report from elsewhere that might help. So.
Yes.
And I think if you wear that Placemake Earth lens, like Ryan was suggesting, and walk around town, things will occur to you. I mean, I was just taking a walk last weekend and I decided that they talk about planting trees in my city, but there's so many trees that are smothered by English ivy. So I've ordered like a saw that is portable and clippers. So on my next walk, I'm gonna go around and cut all of the ivy at the bases of these huge oak trees that are being suffocated. So I think something like that's simple, that you just save these huge trees that are already, you know, hundreds of years old versus planting new ones. So sometimes you just walk around and it'll occur to you as you're thinking about the earth and Placemake Earth and this kind of initiative, is hopefully it sparks ideas.
Yes, and it's the, you know, it's what I wanted to also give a message to all the participants. It's really at this stage the scale doesn't matter, and don't get intimidated by the scale. It's not that that the Placemake Earth Challenge is about, you know, reorganizing the park in the big public park in your city or town. It's about, you know, simple actions in space, and simple actions that has to do with nature as a force, and nature as a element of placemaking. This is what we are aiming for this year. So we are also not going to judge you. There is also not going to be some kind of selection process saying like this picture is ugly. We're not going to take it into consideration, or you didn't put enough effort. As Ryan said, this is a very open and family kind group, and we are here to support your efforts, no matter how big or small they are.
Yeah, and another interesting story we heard was we were meeting with a placemaker yesterday in Birmingham, Alabama, and she had told us that over the course of 30 years or so, the college had done all these ecoscapes. So they've done different interventions in different locations, really well informed. You know, one is near a river where there's a certain species of fish growing that it only lives there, and so they created all these landscapes. But unfortunately, although they created the landscapes, they didn't really complete the placemaking. There's nowhere to sit, there's no shade, there's no water, there's nothing to do there. And those places are no longer maintained. There's no signage. People don't even remember what they are anymore. And so we were talking about, you know, what could be done or how to approach that. And the simplest solution seemed to be to have a barbecue in one of them, connect people to the site, you know, engage them, get commitments from people to have a responsibility for the site, and to imbue it with more of its local character and continue to go forward. So something like that could totally change the trajectory. And looking at some of the work of others that's incomplete or needs its next step, or some better documentation or some better signage or seating, you know, could really enhance things that are almost fantastic functional places, but are not quite there yet.
Yes, that's a very nice wrapping up message for this group for finishing this webinar. And I would like to thank again for everyone for dedicating their time and attention for almost 2 hours for this topic. I'm so happy to see how people really like this format of communication and how they like this format of peer-to-peer exchange. And before we close, just as a last, Ethan, yes.
Can I say just a quick few seconds? I'm just so inspired by what you're all doing.
Okay.
And, you know, I wanted to give a little context on why this is, I think, so exciting what you're doing. So the placemaking movement grew out of the environmental movement in many ways. So, I mean, some of you know the story, but just in case you don't, you know, so my father organized the first Earth Day in 1970, so just over 50 years ago. And I was lucky to grow up around a lot of the founders of the environmental movement, you know, the sort of big environmental organizations in the U.S. But he sort of left the environmental movement because it wasn't enough about people in place at the time. It was sort of abstract. It wasn't connecting to everyday activities, to humanism, to social life, to these small gathering places. And the goal has always been to sort of reconnect these efforts, these movements, the human places and cities with these larger environmental goals. And it's, you know, sort of reinventing it. And really the goal of Placemaking X was to do exactly what you're doing, instead of networking the small changes, sharing the learning, facilitating, supporting people in these you know, small and large ways, creating sort of applying the principles of placemaking to national, international networks, of respecting local expertise, but growing, amplifying these efforts, and then but also looking at these larger systemic change issues. So this is, you know, lots of small things. Everyone's doing something small, but that's really the only way we're going to create the change that's big enough to address our bigger environmental challenges. And so what you're doing, and this exercise itself is a really perfect experiment. It's something we want to learn from and scale, you know, for all types of issues in Placemaking X. We want to help people do small placemaking projects of all kinds, you know, coming at this from whatever direction they come at it, but connecting their efforts, amplifying, you know, creating the learning networks. And that's what, you know, you heard from, you know, that's what Guillermo's doing with Mexico, with, you know, dozens of amazing little projects and a network there, and a larger network in Latin America, and Placemaking Europe network is doing this in so many other great ways, and Placemaking US, and we have 16 regional placemaking networks now. And we're trying, you know, so this is but how we start to connect them with efforts like this is really the next big challenge. So what you're all doing is exactly what we all need to be doing and learning from. And so, you know, I mean, and I'm with you to help anyone on a small project or a big effort. And just to close, it's this very strange, very warm day in Brooklyn. It's March still.
It's a very windy day, so to hear it.
It's very windy. It's never been so windy, but it's also never been so warm in March, which is so it's but it's yeah. So it's particularly important to think about the, you know, these effects on climate today. But anyway, sorry. So thank you, everyone.
Hey, thank you, Ethan, for these encouraging words, and thank you for your support for these, as you say, massive small change actions. And I mean, the support of Placemaking X and Placemaking US has been really essential for this year's effort and also for the last year's effort. And we just hope that we can feature more of these kind of actions through your networks as well, knowing that these regional networks especially are quite strong. And that's what you said about connecting the ideas which are already there, and giving the visibility of the ideas which are already there is already half of the job done, to kind of, you know, materialize of the energy of the people the people have. So okay, if there's some other remarks from you, Ryan, would you like to give your super moderator final final note before we move to the next webinar in 3 weeks time? I'm really excited.
I just want to note that, you know, we heard from Los Angeles, from Rotterdam, from Brooklyn, from Malta, from Mexico City, from Raleigh, from Norway, from Denver, from the Bayou, from
the Bayou,
Finland and Taiwan, and just how cool this is, and really appreciate Ethan and Placemaking X and the Tooltest Day crew for this activity and this network, because otherwise we wouldn't have each other peering over each other's shoulders and helping each other out. And I think it's really impacting me, and I hope everyone's getting impacted as much. So yes. We'll believe in the future and continue.
Yeah, stay tuned. It's going to be really awesome on the Placemake Earth Day. As you said, this cross section of international efforts is just absolutely amazing. The personal stories of people of all these spaces, how do they experience them? How do they see them? It's just great. Okay, thank you guys, and see you in 3 weeks time. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.